Hey everyone, I'm Evangeline right here at etrailer. Since every bike rack fits every car differently, today we're focusing in on how the Swagman XTC2 TILT fits on the 2025 Nissan Rogue. Now this is a very popular bike rack because of its entry-level price while still being able to tilt away. Now with the Nissan Rogue and where the hitch sits on this car, there are some things you do have to be mindful of. For example, this bike sits really close to the vehicle. So we're going to be going through some measurements and some clearances and some tips and tricks that I have for you to make sure that your bike fits, or you can figure out if this is the best fit for you and your car. But first, let's start with that tilt feature. Underneath your rack, there's going to be a pin and a clip. So I undid that pin and clip. So now I'm able to just bring this rack down to a tilt. It's hidden underneath there. Not everyone knows it's there. But once that's undone, then you're able to tilt the rack away so that you can open up your hatch. Now I did this manually, so you can take a close look at the plenty of clearance we have between the door, the pedals, and the handlebars. So if you want to grab something out of your hatch real quick, or if you're the type of person that likes to switch your shoes before and after your bike rides, you can totally do so with this tilting feature without having to take your bikes off, which is great because it is a little bit of a process to load your bikes onto this bike rack. Now, before we go into that though, just make sure that whenever you tilt away and when you're all done, you put the bike rack back into position and you make sure you put that pin and clip back in there. It's really easy to miss because it's not as visible, especially on the Rogue, so make sure to do that. The way this carries your bikes is very straightforward. You have your adjustable loops here that your bike sits on, and this is what's going to provide a lot of that structure. And then when you put your bike on here, you have these straps holding those tires in place. When you want to take your bike off, those straps are going to be the first things that you remove, and they're what really hold down the wheels to those hoops. But then the thing that holds down the whole bike is going to be these frame mount hooks. So these just ratchet down onto your bike like that. When you want to take your bike off, what I like to do, what I've found to make this the most easy process, is I go ahead and pinch those hooks so that I can completely remove the hook. And then from here, I can then just lift the bike up and over. Since the Nissan Rogue's hitch is lower to the ground, and since this bike rack has a maximum weight capacity of 35 pounds, that means I'm not having to hoist a super heavy bike up and over. Now, before I take this bike off though, this is the perfect time to look closely at clearances. So for my handlebars, you'll see that with the bike centered over the rack, the handlebars have about an inch of clearance, a little bit more I would say, before hitting the window. My handlebars are 29 inches long, so that's something that'll be helpful for you for your bikes. Another thing is the pedals. So I actually rotated the pedals so they're up here where the license plate is. So before you load your bike onto this rack, if you can get your pedals in that position, that will be great. Otherwise, your pedals may hit your bumper. So with all that being said, I can now take the bike off. You can see how this fits up and over that center frame. And now it's onto the ground. If this was a heavier bike, that might be a more difficult process. So just something to be mindful of with this style of a bike rack. With the bike off, let's talk about the clearances of this rack. So if you're just driving around town, you've got some options here. I personally would just keep it upright like this because this doesn't take up much room behind the Rogue. So measuring from the bumper to the end of the rack, this is about 15, let's say 16 inches of space this takes up. This is really convenient if you're in a spot where your parking is really small, or if you have a really small garage. This is definitely going to be a low profile rack. Now, you may see a lot of people with this style of a rack, but the legs or the arms are up. That's another option for you. You're going to have these little pins in this rack, and they have little push tabs on them. So you just pull them out, and then you can bring the arms up into a position and then push the tabs in. So that's an option as well. I like to make it where I can get easy access into the hatch, and that's if you bring this middle mast down. So bringing this down like here and then securing it in that position is an option. You just have to make sure that all your cradles and everything is set up for that position. So this gives easy access to the hatch. This is what I would do if I do a lot of grocery runs, things like that. Now, something you do have to be mindful of, though, is the ground clearance, because there's not that much. For the Nissan Rogue, you can see that the hitch is really low to the ground. So if I were to measure from the bike rack to the ground, that's 15 inches here. And then from that inside corner of the hitch to the ground, that's 9 inches. So yes, it gives a little bit of a rise, so your bikes are higher up off the ground. But if you have really steep inclines, like those really steep driveways or those potholes and speed bumps, then you do want to be mindful of your ground clearance with this rack. This is a very popular design because it's so compact, it's so small, and this bike rack is so easy to store in your garage or in your shed when not in use. The downsides are definitely going to be the lower weight capacity of 35 pounds, so this will not be ideal if you have a super heavy electric bike. And you can see it's really close to the vehicle, so you do have to be extra mindful that your pedals and your handlebars all have clearance with this car. Now, hopefully this video was helpful for that process, though, because we were able to see some tips and tricks, some clearance measurements, things like that. Now, this is designed for either 1.25 inch or a 2-inch hitch receiver. My recommendation is, if you do not yet have a hitch on your vehicle, you can find a custom fit one for the Nissan Rogue right here at eTrailer. If you want better clearance, maybe you need a little bit more, like 1 inch more than what we saw today, well, check out one of my favorite hitch receivers for the Nissan Rogue. And if you want someone to install it for you, you can check out our dealer network. We have a locator to help find a dealer near you to get all that put together. Now, this is going to be a really entry-level bike rack. It's going to be affordable while still having all the important features to get your bike out onto the trail. And you just saw how it fits on the 2025 Nissan Rogue.